I just want to say hi and welcome everyone that's watching our second Q&A for Where Do You Go Now? Before we get started, I'm just going to tell you a little bit of why this was created and where do you go now, where it came from. So my name's Donica Patton, Donica Vorkapich Patton, just so you know, it's my middle name. And I have been in real estate since 2004. And I got my real estate license. I built a lot of passive income through rentals that I had. I was around during the crash, last crash, and because of the crash. And I have been in real estate since. Okay, so real quick, sorry, we're having a glitch. And you're in, guys. You're going to have to go ahead and turn down the volume on your computer. Rentals that I had. Okay, perfect. So, hey, it's okay. We're all learning. So we're going to just start over real quick, if that's okay with everyone. Are you guys good to go with that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I started in real estate in 2004. I got my real estate license. And then shortly after that, I opened up a brokerage, real estate brokerage in Altadena. And the market started to crash. And I really was chomping at the bit of, you know what, I was so frustrated with all these homeowners being taken advantage of during, you know, the down economy and so forth. So I made it my mission to help every homeowner I could avoid foreclosure. So I created a book, Where Do You Go From Here? The Truth About When You Owe the Bank More Than What It's Worth. And I was doing that just more from education to help those so they couldn't lose their house, so they had tools and so forth. It's like a 6th grade level read. Anyway, so I did, you know, quite well in the real estate field. And then as life sometimes happens unexpectedly, I went through a divorce. I was a mom of two young girls. And it was unexpected, and I lost everything I owned, all my rentals, all my wealth, and I had to start all over. And this was a few years ago. So single mom in my early 40s, trying to start over. And then as life goes, I had major losses throughout my life. All my entire family passed away. So it was very difficult, and I felt very lost. I felt very confused, and I felt very embarrassed to the point where I didn't even want to talk about my story because I thought I was going to get judgment. So anyway, but I had this glimpse of wanting to get me back and be helpful in real estate and grow in real estate again. So I had that little glimpse, as Frozen 2 likes to refer to it, do the next right thing. And that's exactly what I did. And it's interesting. So where this comes in, this Q&A, is when the pandemic started, I was looking around my neighborhood and my friends and so forth. And I was sitting here asking myself, gosh, you know, I really want to help people and I don't know how. And, you know, thank God it came to me, and it was, well, you know, I recreated my business, which is Where Do You Go Now? How apropos is that for the fact that we're going through a pandemic? Everybody from at some point is going to experience what I've gone through in the past few years, where you're losing everything, your family is passing away, you have to start all over. You have no money, you have no business. So I was like, you know what I want to do is I want to create for my neighbors, for my friends, for my community, a place where we can go to help educate those so they don't feel lost, so they don't feel confused, so they don't feel embarrassed. So here we are, our second session. So thank you for joining in. And I have some amazing ladies with me today. So I'm just going to introduce you. The first lady that we have is Kathryn Morea. So Kathryn, thank you so much for being a part of this. Kathryn is a full-time real estate investor, landlord, author, and Airbnb superhost. So we're going to learn about that. She owns short-term and long-term rentals throughout Southern California. as well as over a dozen out-of-state properties. She's been investing for over 20 years and has done fix and flips, land subdivisions, tax auctions, tax lien certificates, private lending, wholesaling, new house development, and note investing. Kathryn recently co-wrote You've Got This, Tips for Women Who Want to Rock It in Real Estate. It's an amazing book, by the way. And then we have Michelle. Michelle is an investor-focused realtor working with eXp Realty in Southern California. She has extensive experience in real estate valuation and has almost 20 years experience as a certified appraiser. And she is amazing, by the way, just side note. She's worked with local investors, helping them find off-market deals. So this is important for you investors that are listening out there. Michelle is also an investor herself, experienced in long-term rentals, multifamily investments, and flipping property. She's focused on growing her rental portfolio and real estate team throughout Southern California. So welcome, ladies. I'm so excited. And just to let you know, all of you watching, that I am so blessed because these ladies and I have now come together and we are working on building our passive income. So we've been a part of the same Southern California real estate investor team for over like 10 plus years, I think, right, ladies? So we're super excited to start this Q&A. So thank you. Yay.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
absolutely. For having us.
Kathryn. Okay, so Kathryn, if you don't mind, we're going to start with you. And I just have a few questions that I want to start us off with, and hopefully you can help explain to our viewers and in detail so we can understand this pandemic and how we deal with it based on your knowledge, and same with you, Michelle. So the first question I have is, okay, so you have been doing real estate for over 20 years, right? But before you got into real estate, to relate to those that most people don't own a home, they rent, right? They're trying to buy, but it's too expensive. We've all walked that road, but you especially too, Michelle. And a lot of people don't think it's even possible to own a home. So I'm curious, Kathryn, can you share how you actually managed to buy your first home?
Yes.
I think it's a great story, so please.
You know, there's nothing fancy about what I did to get into my first home. It was, you know, really sort of traditional, but the fact is I started early and I knew I didn't want to be a renter. I knew that spending money on rent was a waste of money that you'll never see back again. So I managed to get $7,000 when my grandmother passed and left me $7,000. And I was blessed that I had a little seed money and I was able to use FHA financing to get into my first house in the Valley. You know, it was a lot cheaper then, but interest rates were a lot more expensive. So, you know, I paid 11.5% interest rate on my first home and I was paying about $1,000 a month. And right now you can actually buy a house around $300,000, and with the current like 2.5% interest rates, your payment will be about the same. So you could get into maybe a condo or some of the outlying areas. I just want to urge anyone who doesn't own a home to really think about a way to make that work. With FHA, you can get in for like 3%. There's other programs we won't get into, but I just want to put that out there first to sort of say where I come from and how important it was to get my first step that way.
That's great. That's so encouraging to those, because a lot of people don't know. So
yeah.
Awesome. So now you're an Airbnb superhost, right?
Correct.
So how did you get started with Airbnb superhosting? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to know how to do it, and if there's still ways to do it in this current pandemic.
Right. Well, you know, I sort of like you went through this reckoning during the last downturn, the Great Recession, right? So I was at a place where I was no longer earning money and a job, and I'd quit my job a couple years before, and my savings were starting to dwindle, and I'm like, I don't want to go get a job. What am I going to do? So I had this dining room in my house that we didn't use that much, and we literally just sort of drywalled it off, and it had its own entrance through the French doors, and I started renting at that time on VRBO and HomeAway, and so I used those platforms, and lo and behold, it was rented constantly, and so I created like $2,000 a month revenue just off that dining room that I didn't miss, right? And I had a bathroom and a dining room, and I put, some dishes and a, coffee pot and some things in there. And it was before, this was in the end of 2007. So this was before Airbnb even existed. But then as I saw how well it worked, I had another, apartment go vacant. I furnished it and did the same thing. And I just sort of kept doing that over and over again until I had about 8. And, earned a good living off of that. Times have changed a bit, but being able to share a room or part of your house in a way that you're not tied forever to a roommate, is an option that people, everybody knows about Airbnb now, but, that is something to think about as a way to get into your first house or be able to hold additional property or, get started.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. That's so cool. I can't wait to learn more about that from you. Now, in terms of what you're talking about, can you talk more in detail about like the house hacking? Because I've heard you talk about this a lot, and I could imagine a lot of people not understanding what a house hacking is.
Right. House hacking is a sort of funny term to talk about someone else paying your house payment for you. So a way to get either all or some of your mortgage covered by someone else. So you could do it with roommates, or you can do it, with Airbnb as a home share. So basically, you just want to set it up so that, let's say you have a 3-bedroom house. Well, maybe you can rent 2 of those bedrooms on Airbnb or to other tenants, so that you're sharing the house, but then you've got, each of those rooms, maybe you're getting $1,000 a month for each one of those 2 rooms, or you're able to do it on Airbnb for $1,500 a month or
Right.
$1,000 a month, depending on the market you're in. And, another thing I want to mention is there are rules now in many, many cities across the Southern California area, where they've limited either or banned or restricted the ways that you can Airbnb. So a lot of communities still allow home share, where you can actually share a property you're living in, but won't allow a whole house rental. And other ones have banned it completely. So the first thing you want to do, if this is something you're considering doing, is check with your local city. Find out if there's a regulation about how long you can do it for, whether you have to be 30 days or more, whether you have to be in a particular neighborhood. It can vary as to what the rules are. So you do need to check. For LA, they've got a limit on how many days you can rent. Santa Monica will only allow home share. Malibu, it's still pretty wide open if you apply for a license and you get a permit and you pay your taxes. So it just really depends. I think, Donica, you told me that in Sierra Madre they didn't allow it at all.
No, they don't.
Yeah. So that's certainly something to be aware of. And Donica, we were talking earlier today, and you mentioned the cleaning standards and some of the new rules and regulations and navigating this. And one thing about being either a landlord or an Airbnb host is that you always have to be aware of the regulations, and they're changing a lot because of COVID. So it's there are some regulations about being a landlord right now that you can't do an eviction right now. They're by and large. So there's risk, right? So you have to be aware of that. With Airbnb, they came out, I think yesterday, with a new concept of sort of certifying, or not quite certifying, but allowing people to get a certificate on their hosting page, on their listings for Airbnb, that if you cleaned to certain standards and if you allow like a day between guests, you could get like this badge on your listing that shows that you're compliant with the new standards. And what they're trying to do is make it safer for people, in this post-COVID environment that we're in. And that's elective, right? You don't have to do that. It's just something that you might want to do if you're an Airbnb host, to make your property more desirable for the marketplace. So it's optional. They'll be starting that in May. It'll be something you can opt into.
Okay, so in terms of just where you touched on that in terms of the certificate with Airbnbs, how recent were the laws passed in terms of like dealing with the COVID? you know, the cleaning, right? Explain to me, it's the cleaning and you have 24 hours or is it 48
Yeah.
hours?
Well, so it's, you know, it's a moving target, right? Just like everything with this whole pandemic has been changing. Some of the things that changed right away, I'd say March 13th, around then, sometime a little over a month ago, Airbnb made it possible for everyone to get a refund by and large if they didn't want to travel anymore. So that really upset a lot of hosts. It caused a lot of uncertainty. But on the other hand, you don't want to promote people traveling to other areas with this pandemic. However, a lot of outlying areas have found that they're way up in their bookings because people want to get away from cities and go, be self-contained and safer at home in someone, in some other home or in their own vacation rental,
Right,
or
right.
kind of more off the grid. So it's a moving target. You just have to stay, up to date with the different, uh, you know, Airbnb themselves have pages about, their press releases. And then the other thing is being part of Facebook groups that are Airbnb hosts. That's very helpful because people are, posting updates all the time about what they're experiencing in their market, and what the answers they're getting from Airbnb. So it is changing and moving, and you need to be aware and keep up with things. So the rules about refunds sort of shifted last month. The rules or the options to be part of a new sort of sub-market within Airbnb to say that you have complied with uh, cleaner cleaner standards and leaving places open for at least 24 hours to give any viruses that are on surfaces a chance to dissipate. That I think was just announced yesterday, and it won't go into effect until May. So it's a moving, it's a moving target. I'll try to figure out if there's a way I can share some of those links. And if I can't do it while I'm talking, I'll do it at the end because I can post directly the Airbnb press release.
That would be great. That's a great idea. And yeah, exactly. We can do it when, when this is done too, as well. So that's great. Now the time that I've known you, the one thing that I know about you is that you pride yourself in understanding laws, just like, the Airbnb and so forth. And can we transfer into actually ADUs? And I'm just wondering if you can explain in reference to the new laws, the ones that passed in January of 2020 that allows homeowners to add the ADUs. And can you tell everyone what ADU stands for?
Yes, ADU is for accessory dwelling unit. And I think the ADU's laws came into effect, I think it was the beginning of 2017. And then in 2020, January 2020, they upgraded the amount of things that you could do with the ADU laws. And it's really exciting because what California did is, I think, one of the most exciting things that's happened in California, in years. Basically, you can take a single family home in a residential area zoned R1, which is, single family house, just, a house on a street, no commercial nearby, and you can turn that into a house that has actually 2 extra units. Basically, it's the triplexing of Southern California, or of California. It's statewide. So what this means is that you can take, for instance, your garage and convert it into a unit. And many people did this years ago, right? They maybe had, a granny flat in the backyard or whatever, but it wasn't legal. And most of the time that was not legal. And then if you got caught by the city, you had to convert it back into a garage. Ask me how I know. I've been down that road a couple times. But yet you can do things to code, but if you didn't meet the required setbacks, the required maximum lot allowance, coverage allowance based on the city you were in, you couldn't fix that. It wasn't, you'd already built out your lot more than what the city allowed. You couldn't fix it. So you just had to convert the space back into non-livable space. So in January 2020, they passed an ordinance that allows ADUs as either a attached garage or a completely separate building to be erected on your lot, on your lot with your home. It can be attached, it can be separate. And then the other thing is you can have a junior ADU. which means you can have basically 3 units. Now the junior ADUs are much more restricted in what they will allow. They have to be using basically already existing space. They're much more limited in the size that they can be, but you can use an existing bathroom and you can create another entrance into that part of the property and create a whole separate unit where people have their own way to get in and out. This is really great in the time of COVID, by the way. They thought of this before, but isn't it amazing that you can now have a roommate living in a separate part of your house that has their own entrance, and they can pay you rent to help you cover your house payment, and you don't have to bump into them in the hallway or use the same kitchen as them. So you can have a junior ADU and an ADU. This is California's gift to us.
So there is a reason to stay in California.
And the weather.
Yeah. So that brings up a great point about ADUs, because I have that question a lot about that. And so, Michelle, being an appraiser, a certified appraiser, can you talk more about these ADUs in terms of, are they valued? Are they appraised on the market? Like, can you?
Yeah. So, it's a big conversation, and kind of why I'm here with you guys, because you guys know I love ADUs. So I'm really excited personally about this whole ADU movement. And I think that it's a great opportunity, just talking about getting into properties. I see it lowering the barrier of entry for new home buyers and also for investors to get into a market like Los Angeles that has higher than average prices and high demand, because now what you've done is, like Kathryn was explaining, is you've taken a single family property and you've essentially turned it into an income property. We're not supposed to call it that because income properties, it's not legally zoned as an income property, but you're legally allowed to rent out both units. And the owner on title does not have to reside in either one of the units. So,
wow,
it's completely changed the paradigm. Now, if there's some differences in qualifying for loans, you can only use the income from one of the units to help you qualify for the loan. But if you are a new home buyer, this is another form of house hacking. You now can rent out a separate unit. You don't have to share space, share a house. And a lot of these units that I'm seeing in the Valley, they have their own yards. They're basically like detached, what you would see like a detached duplex, cottage type thing. And some of them are really big. Some of the ADUs they're building are actually bigger than the main dwelling. So it's pretty interesting what's going on. I'm really excited about it. And in terms of valuing them, I mean, I'm seeing really significant returns in the market here locally. I've got my eyes on a couple areas. And I mean, we're talking for new construction ADUs that are permitted to code, a couple $100,000 easily in market value return. Now, does that return the full cost of these units? Probably not, especially if you're just, somebody that doesn't have connections and you're just adding this unit to your property yourself. A lot of these people that are building these ADU units are builders, they're investors, they've got crews in place, they've got processes in place, they've got materials to use up. So they're really doing, they're making good money on these units. So it's just determines on what your long-term plans are and goals are. If you're adding the unit, right, to your property, if it's worth it. But I think it is. I think it's a win-win pretty much any way I dice it up. I think it's a win-win situation.
Okay, that's good. Because I've heard people appraisers only give roughly around a $20,000 to $25,000 value. So you're saying roughly around $100,000, correct? Which is amazing.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm seeing upwards of $200,000 in return of market value for ADU properties. We're talking entry-level neighborhoods, single family house, a detached. These aren't the garage conversion ones I'm talking about. Garage conversion can vary in terms of the return on value, in terms of the access, if they have a separate entry, the quality of the kitchen, did they add on or did they just convert the actual footprint of the garage, which is typically a 20 by 20, 400 square feet. It's more like a studio versus a detached 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit with its own garage, its own yard. It's a big difference in value when you're comparing these ADUs and how they return market value. So yeah, so basically what you're talking about is a little different. So historically, the whole guest unit, granny flat, bonus amenity, bonus accessory unit has been a very gray area for appraisers. And it's because California, like many other states, people were building these things and converting garages and doing things illegally. And one of the things with appraisers is, you know, unfortunately, it's always that question. We're a litigious society, so it's always that question of liability. So being an appraiser for almost 20 years, we were taught in the beginning, do not give anything value that's not permitted, because you don't want to open up that can of worms and get sued down the road. But that's not right. And over the years, the school of thought with appraisers we've been guided more accurately, where our job is to give market value to property. We're not there to determine if every single piece of the property is permitted or not. I mean, you should do your due diligence in terms of public records, but we're there to determine if a certain amenity or a certain aspect of a property returns market value, has contributory value to a property. So what you're talking about when you see a guest house on an appraisal, if you've seen that in the past, and I have people say, oh, but you only get 40,000 on a guest unit. That's just typically, especially in LA, there's no way, because most guest houses or conversion, they're being rented out, and they're being rented out for market rent, most likely. So that does add significant value, whether it's permanent or not, right?
Right.
So you have to, so in terms of like the way appraisers handle that in the past, you have to determine what the value is for that amenity, that ADU. So historically, looking back, you would always try to find a comparable property with a guest unit. You would expand your radius, do your search, and then you would try to find some comps that had guest units. And, you know, and then you would find that range of value for the adjustment difference. And that would be what appraisers attributed value, but they were always ultra conservative. I mean, just, they would put something on the paper just to get it on there to show that they gave it some value. But in LA, that's just not accurate. Where I live here in the West Valley, a guest house, whether it's permitted or not, returns a significant amount. People will pay more. I mean, $100,000 easily for a guest house in that backyard, and they don't care if it's permitted for the most part. I say that.
Yeah.
That.
Tongue in cheek, right? Tongue in cheek. The tongue in cheek, right? Tongue in cheek.
Yeah, you know, and I say it personally for myself. I mean, if I'm buying a house for myself to live in, if there's a guest unit there, I don't, you know, I wouldn't blink in buying a property if it's not permitted. Now, as an investor, with the investor hat, that's a different story, like Kathryn was saying, because now you are renting that out, you're flipping it, or you're reselling it. So you just increased your liability. So you have to take into consideration the cost of bringing that unit up to code, getting it, you know, legal on the books. And if that investment is then worth it, you, as an investor, you always want to take into consideration the cost of getting that unit unpermitted, whatever it is, up to code.
So let's talk about that, if you don't mind, in terms of, you know, the cost. You know, are they worth the investment cost? Can you talk about exactly roughly what it takes financially to build one?
So yeah, garage conversions usually run, this is market prices, so I'm not going to talk from builder investor who's got some major hookups, just market prices. About 60 to 100,000 is kind of the range for a garage conversion. And that's, like I said, you take the footprint of the garage, typical 400 square foot garage, 20 by 20, and you add a kitchenette, you maybe put up some drywall, you know, some interior walls, or you don't, you keep it studio and you add a bathroom. So 60 to 100 is pretty accurate depending on your level of custom upgrades and so forth, if you're putting in yards or other access to. For the detached units, those actually can range, the range is much more significant. I mean, anywhere from, I'd say 100 to 300 plus. And that's just because you're having to, you know, tap into the plumbings. Obviously, if you're detached in the yard, you're having to tap into with a garage conversion, it's probably pretty easy to tap into a lot of the house plumbing already. So the utility cost and just the construction costs in general are going to be much more significant. So, I mean, when I look at properties, I always just say for a detached ADU in my head, I'm 200,000, and that's conservative when I'm running my numbers. I'm not trying to, you know, chintz on the numbers when I'm looking at properties. I just want to make sure I buffer in some breathing room there.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Makes sense. So in terms of that, can you speak from the place of the lending market, accounting for ADUs and the income for these units? Like how is that, have they conquered that yet based on what you're talking about, or?
Yeah, so it's tricky because you think about it. What's the difference between a duplex that's, zone duplex, that's 2 detached units, and a single family with a detached, legal ADU? The only difference is zoning. That's really the only difference, because now you can legally rent out both the single family and the ADU. So, but that is a big issue, the zoning, and they're not looking to change that. Every mortgage person I speak to, I just spoke to another one yesterday, and he said no, that's not on the horizon, that they're ever going to allow you to, the zoning is going to change, which the lenders have to kind of adapt with the times. So as of right now, what they're doing is they're only allowing you to use the income from the main dwelling. So whatever was there originally, and it's not the full income. You can do a rental survey, and it's about 75% of what that income is. But yeah, so so it's not, in the grand scheme, it's better than nothing, because I mean, a lot of these rents for these units are $2,500, $3,000 or more. So you get to have about $2,000, or give or take, income to help you qualify for that loan, which as a new homeowner, that's huge. As an investor, too, renting out both units, as long as you have a big enough down payment, it definitely helps. So.
Well, okay, so if you can kind of go a little further in this, and from the perspective of, let's say I am a new homeowner and I'm going to buy this property, and I'm considering, based on the little I know, I want to add an ADU. So how would you advise me or anyone else that was thinking like that, if you don't mind?
I would talk to you about your long-term goals.
Okay.
And I think for that situation, sometimes you have to look at the other benefits of the property. My personal opinion here is it's a win-win, because if I was a new 20-something investor buying my first house, I would absolutely get into this market and try to get a property and be able to rent one out. I would house hack that way, and do that. And as an older person retiring, right, I would look at it as, either if I'm financially secure and I don't need the money, as a guest house for my family and friends, right?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
if I am on a fixed income, I mean, think about that extra couple $1,000s of passive income every month that you just created for yourself.
Yeah.
So look at the long-term benefits either way you go. I just think I always, when I talk to people about it, I think I'm optimistic with it. I think it's a win-win. And, with prices where they've been in LA these last couple years, I mean, I've just been sitting on a few neighborhoods because I'm watching what's going on. But I mean, I'm definitely going to jump on a couple properties here with the market prices decline here in the near future a little bit.
Okay, so this is more of a question for both of you, and maybe Michelle, you go first, and then Kathryn, answer the same question. So in terms of this COVID-19, this pandemic that we're dealing with, and what we're facing in the next month and a half of soft opening, if you will, where do you see opportunities for first-time home buyers in this current pandemic? I know it's a tough question, but you're both so well educated in this, in real estate, and have been doing it so long. I think it's really important, because I think there are a lot of first-time buyers out there that are like, well, what's the smart play here? How do I do this? What do I do? Should I even buy, right?
Yeah. I mean, if they were just now thinking about buying, I mean, as an appraiser and just watching everything going on, I would say just hold your horses a couple months, figure out what neighborhood you want to concentrate on, and figure out what you want. But let's just see what happens, because I think the biggest effect that's going to happen here in the near future is going to be the jobs and the economy, and how quickly things bounce back from that perspective. So you have, if you're a new home buyer and you're in an industry that is not essential and that is not fully stabilized right now, may not be the best choice to go taking on a mortgage, right? So I think that with interest rates where they are, though, great time, right? And if you've been thinking about it and you've got some savings, I mean, FHA isn't going away, so you'll be able to get into an FHA loan, if depending on your income, obviously. But you know, so there's definitely, I don't know so much about the new buyer grant programs. That's a good Kelvin question.
Yeah.
He knows a lot about those.
I know we on the last Q&A, they were talking a lot about that. And even like the one lender we had with SunWest, you know, he's taking buyers that have a 500 credit score. Like, that's unheard of.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But should they be buying a house? I don't know. A 500 credit score. I don't know.
That's another Q&A.
That's another. I don't know.
So Kathryn, what's your take on it?
I agree with your take on it, is maybe just kind of hold off and be on the sidelines a bit. But I do think there's going to be more and more opportunity within real estate, because real estate moves slowly, right? The stock market crashed in a day or two. Real estate can take 6 months, a year and a half. But what that also means is that there's going to be opportunities, and we're going to see some of the kind of stuff that we saw in 2008 and 9 and 10. So it means to me that if you look at sort of probably some of the more outlying areas, you know, maybe not Beverly Hills and Malibu, maybe some of the more, you know, lesser priced areas in Southern California, that those are going to be hit maybe a bit harder, and you might be able to find opportunity there to get in. But it's great if you are someone who has an income and has a job, and you can take advantage of these great low interest rate loans. And maybe what you do, like Michelle, you were talking about the ADUs. So maybe it doesn't work as a fix and flip because the value isn't quite high enough to justify
No, it's usually
selling
not.
it for the price that you put into it. But if you're buying it to live in it, and you invest in, you know, maybe get a construction loan, or, you know, or if you have family and friends that can help you, get the ADU built and then refi out your original loan, right? Refi the whole thing, and you might not get 100% because you've got to deal with the valuation, but you'll get a big portion of it back, and you'll be at a low interest rate, and then you've got a great house payment that you know, and you've got rental property within your house that you can rent out. So that might be one way to house hack.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So let me ask you both a question in terms of, you said similar to the last downturn. So if you can both, you know, put on your investor hat and answer that in terms of, do you think we're going to go through as many short sales and foreclosures like we did in 2008? What's your thoughts, predictions? Because you say, well, you know, we're going to have a lot of opportunity. Explain that. What opportunities do you think you're going to see?
I do think there's going to be opportunity. I don't know if it will be as much, because I think some of the basics were better than in 2008. Like, we didn't have people just getting loans that didn't have jobs, and, you know, in that sense, we were more stable. But now we've got such a huge amount of people on unemployment. It can't help but fall into the real estate market. You saw what happened with the stock market. We've got people whose jobs have not come back, and I don't know, you know, what's going to happen to people who worked as a masseuse, as a personal trainer, you know, nail salons, hair salons. You've got a lot of the market, you know, restaurants, and, you know, we don't know how they're going to come back, what that's going to look like.
Yeah, even the people that got the down payment assistance programs. What about those people?
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So there's something there with, you know, we don't know exactly how that opportunity is going to shake out, but I'm telling you, there will be opportunity. And just to start being ready for that, maybe you take a little time off and just educate yourself about what you want to do, understand the market you want to be in, and then be ready to move forward with that in a few months or a year. So that would be what I suggest.
Michelle, can you?
Yeah. So I mean, the last crash, as we all know, it was caused by the housing market and the mortgage mortgage industry, you know? So this is so different, and we don't have anything to compare it to. The last crash, you know, the last couple crashes all had some similarities in terms of, I don't know, I want to call it fraud, but yeah, fraud, some kind of fraud going on, savings and loan, or the last. So anyhow, this one's a little different with the pandemic causing the shutdown of globally. So it's going to be a shakeout. There's no way around it. Too many people, you know, I think too many industries are going to have to adapt, and there's some industries that are just not going to be able to adapt. That's the whole point, is there, you know, whether it's like concerts in the park, or, you know, you think about some of these big industries, and they're just, it's going to change. Life's going to change a little bit. So getting back to normal is definitely going to be a new normal. There's going to be some kind of shakeout, but there's also a lot of people that are waiting on the sidelines. And there's been a huge transfer of wealth. And, you know, unfortunately, with where we are in society, there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines with a lot of cash, and they're ready to scoop up. So,
Yeah, and people always need a place to live.
People always need a place to live too.
Well, okay, so Michelle and Kathryn, obviously, where do you see prices going in the next year?
Down.
Okay.
Hey,
My scientific. Hey,
Michelle, as an appraiser, have you seen that comp out at all yet?
Yeah.
Yes, I have actually. I just looked at a property last week that was an escrow. It's a purchase, and they had 4 offers at asking or whatever, at 560. It was up in the high desert, and it was barely worth 520 with where it was at. And they had multiple offers. Well, people wanted to buy it, but it's just not there. So yeah, that's markets like the outskirts areas. I'm already seeing it. Not anything. I can't say, it's too soon. You have to have at least, 2-3 months of data to show any kind of trend. So yeah, you can't. Next month, ask me again next month.
We'll do another one.
We'll be in month 3, so we'll probably start to see some effects. And really, with the issue that I'm seeing right now is just inventory. So a lot of people pulled their houses off the market. You have buyers that are now on the sidelines. So even though there's not a lot of inventory, things are selling. Yeah. They have been. I'm surprised at the numbers of properties that are selling. But I've also seen some properties that were priced high maybe at the beginning of the year. That days on market number is going up on a lot of properties too. The properties that were priced really top of the market, trying to squeeze out every penny they could. So yeah, if this wouldn't have happened, those properties may have been sold by now. Yeah. But people are thinking twice about overpaying.
Right. So and then this is for both of you, where do you see the opportunities for like seasoned investors? Let's put first-time home buyers aside, but let's talk about to the seasoned investors out there that might be watching or watching later. What's both of yours take in terms of, the opportunities that you foresee happening?
For me, I see seller financing as being a huge opportunity. So seller financing, if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's basically someone owns a home, or either outright, or maybe the bank owns part of it and they have a mortgage, and they agree to let you take over the payments, or they agree to carry that loan themselves as the previous homeowner. You come in as the new homeowner and you start making payments to them, and they become the bank. So that, I think, is going to be a great opportunity for people to exit a piece of property and have some investor come in and take over and, rent it out, and make the payments to the previous homeowner, who then can move on in their life. So maybe they can get
becomes the bank, right? The homeowner, in essence, becomes the bank.
Right. The seller becomes a bank. So they've created a revenue stream for themselves where they're getting payments every month, and probably, more interest than they would be earning if they just put their money into a CD. And also the tax advantage for a seller doing that is huge, because they don't get a big capital gains tax. They only have to pay an income tax on the money they actually received during that year. So they're spreading out 30 years of capital, the next 30 years. For instance, if you negotiate a 30-year mortgage with someone who's selling their property to you. So I think investors are going to be looking at seller finance as a way to acquire property, especially as lending tightens up, right? Because that's another thing that happened. It happened in 2008, and it happened again last month. We had all kinds of programs that allowed you to do something kind of similar to stated income, right? So we had programs that said, if you have assets, we'll let you in. If you have, you don't have a job and you're self-employed, we'll let you, buy a house, buy a property. And all that, virtually all of that dried up overnight, between, I think, March 13th and like March 20th. All those programs went away. So if you're an investor who wants, more creative sort of structuring, that's much more difficult now. That's tighter. But on the other hand, the opportunities are going to come. The opportunities will come a bit behind that. There may be some right now, but it's just an unstable market. Yeah. So I think for investors, they're going to see seller finance deals, and they're going to be ready to pounce, right? They're going to be watching what's happening and finding deals where they can do fix and flip, or where they can acquire properties that may be cash flow in Southern California. What about that? We haven't had that in a while.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been following a lot is the movement to smaller developments, smaller houses. I think that we're going to see a migration with the younger generations, not wanting to go for the big McMansions with the upkeep, and they're realizing they don't need all that. They want a more simple life. They want to travel more. So yeah, we follow pretty closely a couple builders that are buying up land, and they're basically developing them in a really organic way. But they're smaller houses, smaller lots, smaller footprint, green construction. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in the future for bigger investors to take advantage of. It's, tract development, but in a smaller way, in a more simplified way, that I think people want. More and more people want that.
Interesting. So what
younger people? I don't know about old people and the boomers. I don't know if they want that, but definitely the younger generations. Yeah.
So would either of you, just last question, would either of you fix and flip in this upcoming market?
Yeah, I would. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I personally would. It would have to be, it'd have to be a really good entry level price. In terms of the property, it'd have to be a pretty good deal. I'd have to have some room for error in it. But yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned, because I always have a backup plan of holding it long term anyways. That's kind of my fallout. So I wouldn't get into an investment that, I didn't have a good backup plan. So, and the backup would be rental. In this market, your rents are going to stay pretty stable. People are going to need to live here and work here and rent here. So I don't foresee rents going down too much, maybe a little bit in some of these neighborhoods where people are paying $3,800 for a 1,200 square foot house, in a typical neighborhood.
Are you talking about Sierra Madre?
Yeah. I mean, Woodland Hills all out here in the West Valley, it's crazy. So you might see a dip by a few $100s, but it's not going to go down too much. I don't foresee.
Your
head shaking, Kathryn.
No, I'm not going to do fix and flip right now. I don't want to catch a falling knife. I'm going to let it out a bit. I'll wait on the sidelines for a fix and flip deal. Now, something actually pencils as a rental. I looked at some properties in Palmdale in the last couple of weeks that, seller finance deals that penciled nicely. And so that would be something I would pull the trigger on something like that. But I'll leave fix and flip for the people who do that all the time anyway in the market that they just got out of. And if they still feel like they can make it work, I'll let them do that.
So that's a good thing to know, especially with those that are brand new to real estate investing or wanting to get into it, especially because of what we're going through. Yeah, that's great advice. I agree. So Thank you, ladies. I really appreciate all your education. And, you know, I really want to encourage those that are watching or that will watch in the future. If you have questions for these ladies, it's, you know, please let me know and so forth. And, you know, Kathryn and Michelle, is there anything that you want to say in closing to these people watching? Anything you want to offer out to them just so they can reach out to you for more information?
Yes, I want to offer, my email is kathryn.morea@gmail.com. And if you want to email me or you want to private message me on Facebook, I have an offer for you. I want to offer a book that I co-wrote.
Yay! Oh my God!
So I will send you this book. And so there are some great authors in here. I don't know if anyone watching knows Iris Veneration or Deb Razzo, who started the Wren Group. So this is a fun book, and it's all women, for women who rock at real estate investing. So I'm going to offer that as my.
Oh my God, that's huge. That book is amazing. Oh my God. You feeling okay? Like, wow. That's so cool.
I've got a few extra copies. And I will make a point of putting in on this Facebook post, I'll put in the ADU link and the link about the Airbnb stuff. So that's just in there as content for anyone who's interested in those things.
Wonderful. Oh my God, that's huge. Thank you, Kathryn. And Michelle?
Yes, my email is Michelle with 2 L's, SoCal, REI @gmail. And I just want to offer to anybody, you know, I've got a lot of appraisal skills. So if you have a situation or a scenario that you want to ask an appraiser a specific question, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to discuss it with you in detail. So that's my offer up for you.
She is no joke, I have to tell you, because she's amazing when it comes to appraisal. I had a really tough one in Sierra Madre, as we all know. And man, you really just, you spend so much time and effort and detail with it, which was, you know, so educational. And, you know, sometimes the sellers don't always go for appraisals. So it is what it is. But you, by far, in my hands of doing real estate since 2004, you've definitely been the best appraisal I've ever worked with. So hands down to you. So they're getting a great, great, great deal for that. So anyway, ladies, I just want to thank you so much. And those listening and watching, thank you for joining. And please, you know, if you didn't catch their email addresses or, you know, please contact me. I'd be more than happy to forward that to you. And all the information that Kathryn was posting or has posted on her page, I'm going to post it on Where Do You Go Now as well, their emails. So be sure to, you know, pay attention to it and reach out for any questions. And then ladies, I'm super excited about next week's Q&A. So I'm going to start doing this every week, and you ladies are going to start helping me. So that's going to be awesome. We're going to do this team thing. So yeah, so next week we've got some exciting people coming on. I think we're going to have 3 to 4 people coming on. So I'm really excited about that. So stay tuned. And I think actually Michelle or Kathryn's going to be leading the Q&A. So stay tuned for that. And thank you all for watching and being a part of this, and make it a great day. And look forward to seeing you ladies soon.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.